Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello.
Morning.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hello, mine says 1B Doyle Huff, but that's my daughter. So this is Darcy.
Hi, Darcy.
And our screen for some reason isn't working. It's kind of backwards. So I'm just going to listen.
Okay.
For some reason my camera's not showing.
I am here, Barbara Nagel, CASA for King County. Where's the?
Hi, Abdul. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Sorry, I had some technical difficulty. I was waiting to get invited in and fortunately got in.
We had about 84 people signed up, right, Vinika? We'll just wait a few more minutes.
Yeah, about like 88.
80.
Sounds good. Okay, I think we are ready to get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Renika, and I will be moderating today's Lunch and Learn. So how we usually do this for folks who are new is I will allow the panelists to introduce themselves, and then from there, we will go into questions that panelists in the EEC have conjured up. And as participants, if you have any questions throughout the Lunch and Learn, please drop them in the chat, and we will try our best to get to as many, if not all of them, and do the best that we can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves, and I will start with Abdul.
Nice. Salaam alaikum. and peace be upon you all, to all those who are, listening to this luncheon. My name is Abdul Hamid Abdurrahman. I'm from Chan Refugee Community Center. I'm a program coordinator here. Firstly, I would like to say I'm thankful to be sitting on this panel organized by the Equity in Education Coalition, and hope to share some, beneficial insight that will benefit everyone in this room, and on behalf of the Muslim students and families in Washington State. As a Muslim, Asian, Cham American male, I feel like I have some kind of privilege that some of my Black, Indigenous, people of color brothers and sisters do not have regarding being a Muslim. So I don't want to say that I don't have the answers to all the questions, and I will do my best to answer to the best of my ability from my experiences.
Thank you. And Iman?
Hello, everyone. My name is Iman. I'm from the greater Seattle area. I've been here my whole life. Identify as Black and Muslim. The community that I'm most closely connected with is the Ethiopian Muslim Association of Seattle. And so I could speak to the immigrant Muslim Black experience that I've had in America. I also joined one of the lunch and learns. I think it was the BLM in the classroom, and I really enjoyed listening to that. So I hope that this conversation is insightful, and please, ask us any questions. We want to be an open book, and yeah, so hope that this is informative and helpful.
Yes, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So to our panelists, when I ask these questions, please feel free to just speak. If not, I will call on you, but don't be afraid to just go ahead and talk. So to get right into it, how has the Muslim ban affected the experience inside and outside of the classroom for the Muslim community, and how has your safety been compromised because of this? And I will start with you, Iman.
Okay, I was waiting to see. Honestly, I feel like it was really heightened I attended the University of Washington, so it's a predominantly white campus. There's Muslims, but there's not a lot of us. And so I feel like when the Muslim ban came up, it was very uncomfortable for a lot of Muslim students, and also just the rampant Islamophobia that already exists in America, period, makes it really hard for Muslims to navigate this world. And so when the Muslim ban became a thing, I feel like a lot of Muslims were uncomfortable, couldn't really feel like they could speak on it, because it was just so it was just traumatizing for a lot of people. And then people would just kind of bring it up as a conversation starter, because it was a trending topic for a while. And so it kind of made it seem like people weren't experiencing real traumas associated with the ban. It just kind of seemed like, oh, let's just talk about this today, without really taking into consideration the mental health of the few Muslim people who might be in the classroom. And so I noticed that a lot of students were super uncomfortable, including myself. And we just did not enjoy that time period at all when it was talked about a lot. So I can say that much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going off of what Iman was saying, in King County specifically, Southeast Seattle, there's a big population of Muslim community, predominantly East African, Somali and Ethiopian, and the Muslim ban had been, listed target to ban Muslims for a list of countries, and one of the countries was Somalia. And I know that a lot of my peers had played an effect on their families, because, traveling, visiting, they had a barrier of visiting families and having, loved ones and to be reunited. That was really tough on that. And that was hard for them for that. But personally, my family and I was not directly affected by the Muslim ban. So it was difficult to explain to fellow colleagues on the approach for guidance and on how we can make things, how we can improve, the Muslim ban and everything like that. But yeah, I personally just felt it was heavy for me, for, my peers, again, my East African peers mostly, and then other Muslims as well. But again, I associate a lot with myself with a lot of Somali and Ethiopian brothers and sisters, and I know that their family had was hit pretty hard with that.
Can I just add something?
Go
I
ahead.
just thought about how the Muslim ban racialized what it means to be Muslim, when in reality, anyone of any faith, any religious or racial background can be Muslim. But the Muslim ban kind of put this image that only people from these certain countries are Muslim and that the majority of Muslim people come from those spaces, which is not true at all. And so it was really hard to explain to people that, yes, it was a Muslim ban, but it was already like problematic in the way it was set up because
Yep.
Muslims can be from any country in any part of the world. And also, yeah, just going off of that, like it's hard to explain to people what you're going through in addition to how it was being racialized in society.
So, going off of those comments, how has rampant Islamophobia affected your experience, and what do you think can be done to deconstruct this? And I will call on Abdul.
Yeah, so your question was, how has rampant affected your experience? Islamophobia affected my experience. It affected in many ways, but something that sticks out right now, like as I think about that question, is when it plays an effect, especially when I travel. You know, like again, I said, as an Asian, you know, as a Muslim Asian male, I feel like I got that privilege and only get identified as a Muslim when they see my name. You know, and that happens when I go to like TSA, especially, or going to like a job interview. I always have a fear when I travel. Like for some reason, like even though I'm not doing anything wrong, I just have the natural instinct of fear. And when I travel, I just try to be on like the best behavior. But though I still sometimes get randomly checked, and that plays a big tendency. Also, when I travel outside of my home or my neighborhood of South Seattle, when I'm with my family, you know, I have a majority of women in my family, and they wear their hijabs, and when we're out and about, I'm always being aware of my surrounding, having to look over my shoulder. Again, just for our safeties. So that definitely affected my experience, and so yeah. And to the second part, how can we deconstruct this? I feel like there are many things that's come up again, but I think educating, you know, learning about like religious competencies and teaching each other, you know, different values and principles of the religion, rather than just being judged on what's being portrayed in the media and in films and whatnot. And I'm gonna pass it on to Iman. Maybe she can have some more insightful thing, and then maybe we can just go back from there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely traveling is really hard, especially because I wear hijab. I have multiple instances where I'm either asked to remove it, or they have to like pat my head multiple times, or, you know, make sure I don't have anything in my head when it's like clearly it's my hair. And like, you know, I have African hair, so like my bun might be up sometimes. And so it's just like weird things that'll be done that make you feel like uncomfortable and different in situations when it comes to security. But then at the university level, there's always instances where, like, especially Muslim women who just deal with a lot of hate crimes. Like, I've seen people get like hit in broad daylight with a bottle to their head at UW campus because she was just Black and Muslim and just living her life and walking on campus. That was also kind of the heightened like phase of Islamophobia when Trump had just got elected. So it was like kind of that era, but like people were just getting hit or like spit on for being Muslim. And so that's like the extreme end of like, you don't even get to say anything and people just have this hatred towards you because of your religious preference and your background. I can also speak to a lot of Muslim women, including myself, have had people like take your scarf off like in public spaces, like as a joke. Which is like really dehumanizing because one, like Muslim women already struggle with wearing hijab because people always look at me crazy for wearing it. Like, why do you wear that? What's the point of it? And kind of trying to see why wear hijab in the first place, which I'm so happy to answer those questions when they come from a genuine place of, I just want to understand your religion. But sometimes it comes from a place of just hatred. So you're kind of like scared of what will come of that action next. But a lot of my friends, like every Muslim girl can tell you an experience of someone removing their scarf, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's just in public, you're just walking and someone just decides to yank it off your head, which for me is really disgusting. And every time I think about it, like I just get so upset because like that doesn't happen to other people. Like no one just comes and like pulls off your clothes. Like that's just weird. And a lot of Muslim women deal with that. As far as deconstructing it, I think there's a lot of work to be done within the Muslim community as well as outside. It's really hard to create that unity or space when there's a lot of, I guess, anti-Blackness within the Muslim community, in addition to the outside world already hating Muslims. So now I'm kind of dealing with two things. I'm dealing with rejection within my own community, and then I'm dealing with rejection in the outside community who won't accept me for who I am. And so I feel like there needs to be more work and understanding that, yes, it's hard to be a Muslim person and a woman, but on top of that, your race definitely plays a huge role in how you navigate this space. I feel like I've gotten a lot more slurs and things said to me because I'm Black and I'm Muslim. And I obviously can't equate one to the other or compare the two, but people who are just Muslim and who are white passing and don't have a melanin, they're not getting the same hate or the same things said to them. And so I feel like people don't realize that when Black Muslims are talking about we don't feel safe. It's like we don't feel safe in our Muslim community and we don't feel safe on the outside. And so you're always constantly like on edge because you just don't know how people feel about you.
I like how Iman shared that it starts within the Muslim community, and I totally agree, and I do see that too. And I think just starting up with dialogues, having community dialogues, and bring awareness to the issues, and not just what's happening outside in the community, but within the community as well. And I think that's definitely a great start. Along with that, just having, just having dialogues and support from outside the community, because I feel like as Muslims, we have so much fear that we are silent. Like we don't want to talk about it. We feel like there's not going to be changes because it's so overwhelming and, so much traumatic situations where we feel like changes are far reach, but and the reality is I feel like just Muslims are silent, and we feel like we're labeled as crazy or extremists out to the public when we are just following what we believe in and what God's been telling us, and we fear that we are labeled in a certain way for certain beliefs, and within those certain beliefs we can be be seen as, again, crazy or extremist, radical or whatnot, and I just feel like people are just I don't want to say like naive to the situation, and rather than like learning about one's religion or culture, they just prejudge by what's been told through like the media and film and the news and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do agree though that deconstruction comes from education. There's not much conversation about how Muslims, navigate the world, what our faith means to us. I feel like there's a normalization of Christianity, but when Islam comes up, we're seen as like this very old, backwards religion, when in reality, a lot of religions also have similar morals, but that never ever comes up because people just don't know why we do the things we do. And so I feel like if people knew more about what Islam teaches, I feel like this hatred wouldn't really exist because Muslims really just mind their own business. Like we just care about doing good by people and being good people. Like that's really what our religion preaches. So it's very ironic that we get this much hate when we genuinely don't want to push hate on anyone or violence or any of those type of actions. So it's kind of hard to navigate that world because nobody wants to bring it up. I mean, I know for myself as a Muslim, I'd rather just be quiet and just like not bring up those things because it's just emotionally draining. But I would want there to be safe spaces where people could talk about this stuff to eventually, bring positive change.
Thank you. So both of you touched on quite a little bit on quite a few of these questions I have, but I would love to take a deeper dive. So, what are some misconceptions about Islam that have negatively affected you? And then I would like to also target that, like, especially within the classroom, growing up, currently. Abdul, would you like to start?
Yes, I don't mind. Yeah, in the classroom, I'm trying to think back and like elementary. So like, Islamophobia was a rise after like 9/11. So I'm just thinking about 9/11 time and forward. After 9/11, I felt like many of my peers that were not Muslim had a negative feeling towards me. Even like I felt that change. Like, I can even remember the instance like in school, I had good friends, and then when 9/11 comes out, all these jokes come out and about, and vibes were changing. Like the energy was different, you know. I felt like the only people I could surround myself with were fellow Muslims that were there because we were deemed and looked at differently. And this in mind is this was like an elementary, so I could just like imagine how others were feeling when this happened. But I just grew up with like trust issues and didn't know how to talk about like religion with my friends, and I didn't know how to stand up for myself at that time. I didn't know how to like comprehend everything and explain that what the media is saying is not what I believe, and I'm sure that a lot of my peers, other Muslim peers, were not following that kind of agenda that was aired on the news. So that was one of the area that I kind of like just brushed off and just threw it on the rug and just moved on and tried to assimilate with with other students. But as I grew older, I felt like what I did was not right. I just felt like I was like I want to say like ashamed in the sense of being Muslims, unfortunately. But yeah, so that was that. So I at a young age, I was very cautious of my action because I knew that like my actions, that were stemmed off from values that I grew up with from, from like Islamic principles. I knew that the good that will come out if they ask about it, and I would tell them that it's from, what I'm learning about from Islam. And the bad that I do is just my human nature. Maybe, we're all human. We all make mistakes, Um, so that's something I'm very cautious about. Another misconception about Islam is like, let's throw it out there, like Muslims are from like the Middle East or Arab, and I believe so. Then that's another thing where when my peers know that my name is Abdul, and they be like, "Hey, are you an Arab?" And I'm like, "No, I'm from this Southeast Asia," and I will explain the background, and I'm just letting them know that Islam is a very diverse religion, and it's open to all. So that's just one of like the misconception that I can just think about.
Yeah, and just like going off of that, I agree. Like post 9/11, there was just like a huge shift on like, feeling safe period going outside. Like as a woman, I don't already feel safe. As a Black woman, I don't already feel safe. And then on top of like wearing hijab, it's just like a constant reminder to everywhere that I go that I am Muslim. For women who do cover, like it's a very obvious sign that you're a follower of Islam. So people already have these like negative connotations that they see or think of you without really getting to know you, which when you're younger you don't really know how to express like those emotions. I also just felt like in the classroom you could just see like teachers that kind of like saying like comments, but like you wouldn't really know how to say anything back because you're so young. But then once I got older, it just became a reoccurring theme of like Islamophobic rhetoric kind of always coming up one way or another in my classroom. Just kind of like, I don't know all the time if it was necessarily intentional, but it just seemed to be careless, as if like Muslims are just like, we're not there almost, because usually I'm the only Muslim in the room or one of few Muslims in the classroom. as I got older. So it was just interesting to see how like there was no respect for my religion or people who follow my faith. And then going off of like Islam being very diverse, I think that's another thing I feel like people don't realize is that Islam is super diverse and that anyone can follow Islam. But it's also like Sunnah, or it's like we get good deeds for having names of Arabic background. So a lot of people will have Arabic names, like Iman is an Arabic name. Like people of my culture wouldn't necessarily carry that name. But Islamically, it's considered an Islamic name. So people already have these connotations of like, you must be Arab, you must be of Arab descent to be following Islam. And so that's like another huge misconception. I also feel like people always equate Muslims to terrorist activity, when in reality, majority of Muslims are very peaceful and have nothing to do with what the media is showing. And I also feel like Muslims have more pressure to like not be human first, because the reality is all humans are imperfect. But whenever Muslims do something, it's always seen as all Muslims do X, like all Muslims are terrorists, or all Muslims are crazy, all Muslims are radical. When other faiths or other religions do similar activities, they're given some slack. They're like, oh, well, not all Christians behave this way, or not all Jews behave this way. But for Muslims, some reason, there's a lot of Islamophobia that feeds into making it seem like we deserve the disrespect and the hate and the violent attacks that we get. And so it's very disheartening and dehumanizing, because at the end of the day, we're people first. Yes, we follow Islam and that's our religion, but that's not our whole identity. Like, we're human beings. And I feel like people forget that when they say certain things to your face, or don't want to deconstruct why they feel a certain way about you. And so it's very dehumanizing. Yeah.
So how have your religious beliefs, in like what ways have your religious beliefs been brought up in the classroom? And, you know, how did it make you feel? How did it affect your learning environment? And I think to add on to that, I'll put, how has the negative image of Muslims in mainstream media affected your experience in the classroom as well? And I will call on Abdul.
So the first question was, how was Islam or religion was brought up in the classroom?
Yeah, like how, in what ways was your religion brought up in the classroom, and how did it make you feel? How did it affect your learning environment?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't feel like I have so many experience of having like the Islam being brought up in class, though I do remember sometimes there was like short films on like about what's been trade, like what's happening around the world, like with the wars and stuff like that, and Muslims were involved, and that was been talked about, and all I see about Muslim was terrorists and attacking, you know, doing all these harmful things, and they didn't really talk about any of the good side of what, you know, of what Islam is really about. And as at that time when I was as a student, like when I was younger, I didn't have the confidence to really speak up about it. So I felt ashamed, and I just kind of like was kind of silent about it, the situation. So that was that. But there was another time in social studies class, we was teaching, I think it was about like different trades, and I forgot the specific details, but I do remember on the slide there was a Quran, Islamic, like Arabic text, which was from the Quran, and then the teacher was like, "Hey, Abdul, do you know how to read Arabic and whatnot? Can you read that?" And so when I read it, you know, it was from the Quran, and so I read that, and it was like the whole class was astonished, was like, "Wow, you know how to read Arabic, you know, you're Asian, you know, and I didn't know you can do that." So those, like, I guess that's kind of like a misconception. Again, it's like only Arabs will know how to read Arabic, but this Arabic language is very known to lots of different cultures and backgrounds that can, you know, speak and read this language. So that was like the only thing that that been brought up in the school that I can remember in the classrooms. Maybe I'm gonna pass the mic to Iman, and I'm gonna think about it a little bit, and maybe something will a light bulb will pop up.
Yeah, I always think about whenever we talked about religion, it was always very brief. But if we did talk about religion, Islam was brought up for like a very short amount of time, and it was always taught incorrectly or without like much thought. So you could just tell that like if I wasn't in the classroom, like the teacher wouldn't have even tried to correct themselves or do the research prior to explaining what Islam is. And so it just kind of shows that there's like a lot of carelessness and when it comes to teaching Islam, which also affects how people view Islam because they're never really learning it in the same way like we learn about other religions. I mean, I want to say in general, American school systems don't really emphasize religion, but when we do learn about it, Islam was always like not emphasized at all. And I always felt like I was responsible for like correcting my teacher on things because they would say things like, oh, you know, Muhammad is seen as God in the Islamic religion when he's not, he's just a prophet. And so that's something that you could literally find out in like a 5-second Google search. So to know that like teachers were not putting in that effort when they're coming forward and saying like, we want to teach Islam today, which just kind of seemed like they didn't really care. They were just kind of doing it just to do it. And I also felt like, for me at least, I don't see religion as a cultural practice. I see religion to be separate from culture. And a lot of the time when we learned about stuff in school, it's always like, oh, there's Islamic culture. And it's like, okay, if you're going to talk about culture, why don't you categorize all religions as cultural? When if you ask most people in any religion, they don't really consider religion and culture to be interchangeable. But for me, I found that as a way to like gloss over that religion isn't really that important and that we don't need to talk about it. And so, I don't know, it just kind of made things awkward because whenever you're like, oh, religion is super important to me and how I navigate my life, and I don't see that to be equivalent to culture, it just became weird. And so I never would openly speak about how important my faith was to me. But obviously, like when I was upset, then I would have to like go tell a teacher because I don't want other Muslim students to deal with that. So I was like, okay, I'll just maybe take having my grade compromised to just go tell this teacher that they're being Islamophobic. And so it was always a gamble of like my grade going down the drain or me telling a teacher that what they did was wrong. And so that was like a constant battle that I dealt with because, you know, if they flunk me, I can't be like, oh, it's because I corrected you. They're just going to be like, you know, it happened. So it was really hard dealing with that in school.
Thank you for sharing your experience. And when in school, were Muslim students provided a safe space for prayer? And how did the schools deal with religious holidays? I know that I had heard from a Muslim woman that she had taken a day off of school for a religious holiday. When she came back, she had explained to her teacher, here's why I wasn't in school. And her teacher made a very snarky remark, like, are you always going to take the day off for these holidays or something like that? So I just am curious to hear how that was for the both of you in K-12, university.
Yeah, I can start off with that too. You know, I want to start off by saying maybe majority of people do not know that in the Islamic faith, when one reaches the age of puberty, they are accountable for their actions. So puberty can come at a very early age, maybe sometimes starting early in middle school, and they have to offer their 5 daily prayers. And there's 5 prayers, there's one in the morning, one at noon, one in high noon, one in the evening, and one at night. And majority of the time at noon, they're in school. So they will have to offer a prayer. There was never like a space to pray. And I remember from my experience, when I asked like a teacher, I'm like, I need to be, you know, I might be a couple minutes late, or I need to go pray. They would be like, they'll just like downplay the reason that I have to pray. Like it wasn't important to you. It shouldn't be important than just learning in class. And another experience is going to Friday prayer, as you know, Jummah. So on Friday prayer, we usually, as the male students, we usually get excused or try to get an excuse letter to go offer the prayer, and then at times, sometimes return back to school. Some teachers, a majority at that time, I feel like before there was always a test or something big happening on Fridays, and we will inform the teachers about that, trying to get excused for like, hey, we got to go to prayer but then they were like, oh, you're not going to be excused for this assignment or this test. And, we would battle between the two. Like, should I go pray, something that's obligatory upon me, or should I go, take this test, which is also very important as well. So we played the better two. And sometimes, teachers won't excuse you, even though you have an excuse slip, they won't excuse you in class. And then I once had truancy, and I know other peers of mine had truancy as well for something that they were excused for. Another, the religious holidays. I feel like a lot of different holidays was acknowledged and practiced in the schools when it was time. But when it was Eid, we have the Muslims celebrate Eid and Ramadan. During the month of Ramadan, they follow up with Eid. We don't have the days off of that. Sometimes I know students battle between going to school for an exam or an assignment, rather than celebrating their religious holidays with friends and families. And I just think not too recent that OSPI just recently acknowledged the Eid holidays, and students are excused. And I'm not so. That was my experience, and I just felt like they recently are recognizing the Eid holidays, which is pretty nice. But I feel like that should be also a day off. That's just a personal experience.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't really get time off to pray in K-12 because they were just like, what are you talking about? What prayer? Like, it was just a lot of like gaslighting. So at some point you just kind of give up or pray when you get home, which is already past prayer time, because by the time you get home, it's the next prayer. And so just like, there's only so many battles you could fight. And then your parents are also scared that, you're not going to do well in school if you're, fighting your teachers. So they're kind of like, just let it go. Like, you could pray at home and all this stuff. So I remember my parents like not really trying to fight my teachers on that. So I just never really tried. But in college, I would just skip class because like at the end of the day, I would just lose participation. But I had, my own choice. Like, I could just leave. So it was kind of like, that's what I had to do. I would just have to pick like, okay, I'm just going to leave for 20 minutes and ask someone for notes or something. I don't know. And so it kind of became like, you already know your teachers are not going to really be accommodating. So you just kind of have to take your own actions. And same with Friday prayer. It's similar to how, people go to church on Sundays. Like, Friday is the day Muslims go to the mosque to pray. So it was just kind of always like, having to skip work or be late to work or skip class because no one was going to really accommodate or like understand why you're doing what you're doing. And same with Eid. There were certain times where I would take a test in the morning and then go to Eid, but then Eid prayer is in the morning. And so like Eid kind of feels pointless if you skip the prayer part. Like that's the main part of the day. And so it was kind of disappointing because there's a lot of days in K-12 where I would like have something and then I couldn't leave till the afternoon. And so by the time you leave, you're like, this is like, it's not even fun anymore. Like, it just seems like you're just there just to be there. You didn't get to enjoy the whole day with your family. And also in the Western world, people don't really get to celebrate Eid for the whole 3 days. Like, Eid is usually 3 days, but most people only here ask for the first, like that one day off. And so it's kind of disappointing that students can't get accommodated for one day when other holidays, we always get those days off. And so it just seems to me that it's like, they just don't care or don't want to accommodate students. So it's nice to see that now there's some type of like recognition. So students don't always have to explain, okay, this is my religious holiday. But I guess the harder part about Eid is that it's not on the same day every year, which I feel like is another reason why people don't want to accommodate it. Like, if it was like, okay, it's always this month and this day, then students and teachers could have that relationship of you telling them, a year in advance, like, I need this day off. Because we go with the lunar calendar, it changes every year. And so it seems like we're playing games or that we're lying when we're like, oh, Eid is this day. They're like, wasn't it, the other month last year? And so it looks like you're playing around, but it's like, really, we just follow the lunar calendar. And so I feel like if they knew that, then they would know that we're being serious and we're actually asking for the least amount of days off and not the full 3-day celebration. We're just asking for that first day off because most students go back to work and school regardless of the other 2 days being Eid.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Iman and Abdul Hamid, mashallah, you guys are doing amazing. If I can add on to a couple of points that they've already stated, uh,
Please.
when it comes to prayer itself, um, I know sometimes it's hard for someone not in the culture to fathom, how can someone make this such an important part of their existence technically, when we wake up like sometimes 3 a.m. in the morning just to fulfill a certain prayer. Um, the thing is, uh, prayer itself is I think, not I think, but we know as Muslims is one of the most important parts of our life. It is the second pillar of faith after the testament of saying that God is only there's only one God worthy of worship, and that's Allah, and that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is his final messenger. After that, the most important thing is our prayer. So that's why we hold it to such a high regard, and we believe that it's going to be the first thing that we'll be asked about once we've passed from this world. So, I think especially when you're in school, it's hard for a teacher to comprehend how a 14 or 15-year-old kid is can dedicate themselves so much to something like this, because it's not normal and it's not something that you see on a regular basis. So we've all experienced moments where, just like Iman said, they're not going to accommodate your prayer times necessarily, because there is something that they don't understand. Like there's some teachers I remember myself saying to me, "Oh, you're just doing this just to skip, huh?" And I'm not going to say that I was the best student in the world necessarily, but that wasn't the case for me, and I remember there was no prayer space necessarily. We used to pray inside of the hallways, where sometimes the prayer time would align with the bell schedule. So sometimes we're praying outside, and there's like 50 to 100 people just walking in between us and beside us and everything, and it was a very awkward situation and whatnot. And I remember one time, even myself, I told one specific teacher, there's specific teachers out there. They're just, for lack of a better word, they're difficult to deal with, and she was especially hard on Black students, and mostly mostly kids the underprivileged students. So one day I remember I said to her, I have to go and pray. And this is a normal thing that I did, it's not something new. It's not something that I just came up with out of nowhere. It was like, oh yeah, today I'm gonna go pray. But it was a regular thing. And I remember her saying to me, you're not going to go anywhere until you finish this packet. And I told her, I tried to explain to her, the prayer time has a set schedule, and we cannot, we have to try our best to try and make it on time. And I remember she said something like, no, you're not going to go. I said, you're not going to go, so you're not going to go. And as a young student, you get angry, and for someone not understanding where you're coming from. So I was like, man, who are you to tell me that? Are you God? Are you God to say I'm not gonna go pray? I got up and left the classroom, and I remember it was a big deal at the school, and I got suspended for I think 2 days, and my parents had to come and have a discussion with the teacher, and it became a whole situation. Uh, After that, she still gave me a little bit of trouble here and there, but for the most part, I think she understood a little bit more. And I think that's something as educators, you, I think for the most part, you guys have to try and understand from where the student is coming from. So, for example, if they come to you and say, this is something that's very important to them, and they have to go do, instead of questioning I guess questioning their attachment to their faith, you should just accept it and let it go, because at the end of the day, that kid could have just skipped class. That kid could have just not come in general, or that kid could have just got up in the middle of you teaching and just walked out. And for them to actually ask you in front of the whole class is something big, and to state that I'm gonna go and pray is something huge. And when it comes to Eid, you know in school we learn about a lot of different holidays. You know, we learned about of course Christmas, Easter, uh, uh, Mardi Gras, Cinco de Mayo. You know, we learn about these holidays a lot, and a lot of times it becomes a big deal when we make events inside of class for these things. But and even Hanukkah, I remember even once we a few times we did celebrations for Kwanzaa. You know, and I've never been in a class where we've had a celebration for Eid necessarily. You know, I've never been in that situation, and I don't know if anybody else has, but I think it is something that we should try and incorporate into our yearly schedule and try and since the students are not going to be available on Eid, maybe do something beforehand. You know, just like Christmas, where we're not able to be there on Christmas Day necessarily, but we have like a whole week dedicated to Christmas and decorations and everything like that. So I think it should be something that is incorporated. And forgive me if I took too much of you guys' time.
Oh no, you're great. Thank you so much. So continue off that, I would love to hear what are some policy changes y'all would like to see in the legislation for districts and universities when it comes to having better policies and honestly respect around needing time and space for prayer and for these religious holidays, because like you all have stated, we do teach other religions in the classroom. We do respect the holidays of that are associated with religions that not everybody follows and is a part of. So yeah, I would love to know what are some policy you would like to see implemented around this.
I can start. I'm thinking like the same way we incorporate like there's a whole huge push right now to incorporate like ethnic studies, kind of like on that same wave, trying to incorporate some type of standard for what religious study should look like. And so like you said, it's going to be easier to ask, you know, your teachers, can I go pray, if they understand why you're doing it, if they understand your religion. And so if that's normalized and students are learning about the religion already, it's not going to be a crazy question because they understand, okay, you have to pray because it's this time of the day and they know why you're doing it, versus like you have to explain your whole religion in front of everyone and basically beg to go pray. I also think that the holiday thing, having some type of recognition of Eid and especially Ramadan, I feel like a lot of students, like we fast, we go to work, a lot of us work more than one job. If we're immigrant families, like it's hard to keep up with your classes. And there's some teachers who are like, well, you have to take the final at this time and that's it. And, you know, you haven't eaten or drink any water because that's how Ramadan is. We don't eat or drink water from sun up to sundown. And so taking a full course load while working and doing other activities is really exhausting. And so I feel like there needs to be, I feel like now there is more leeway, like there's more general understanding of what Ramadan is and teachers are more lenient, but it's still up to the teacher to just be like, well, I don't feel like that's a barrier, so you should still have to take this final, or you still have to participate in class or stuff like that. And a lot of students start fasting really young. Like Abdul was saying, it's usually around the age of puberty. So if you're, you know, in K-12 fasting and dealing with the full course load, I feel like there should be some type of accommodation or, you know, something not for you to slack off, but like if you need an extension on something, that you should be granted that extension, because it's not fair for you to just be like half asleep in class because you're dehydrated and not be able to, like, you know, take a 5-minute break or just be able to walk around or something. And so I feel like that would be really helpful for students.
Yeah, just to add on to what Iman was saying, I feel like instead of the student educating the teachers, just the policy that should be in place is like a religion competency training for staffs or something like that. You know, Muslims coming in or religious leaders coming in and teaching about different practices and beliefs, and then so that they can be aware of students is, you know, especially in Washington State or just in America, is a melting pot of all different diverse backgrounds of religions and cultures. You know, just to understand from, just to have a wide range of diverse understanding of that, it'll be nice. And then just to emphasize to, what Imam was saying, acknowledge Eid holidays. Having, you know, if we follow the Lunar New Year and it might be 1 or 2 days off, maybe just have 2 days off, you know, just to accommodate. There's always a way to accommodate these issues that are preventing days off or whatnot. And that's pretty much what I think. It's pretty big. It's just religious competency, understanding where the students are coming from, not having like the students be ashamed of what they believe in and have to stand up for themselves all the time. I think I think, you know, instead of always having to speak up, I think it'll be nice to have staff be aware of the belief and understandings.
Thank you. Are there any institutions in Washington or in the King County area that provide information or activities to learn more about Islam?
I think the only one that I know of is CARE Washington. They do the most, like, they do a lot of like legal support, but they also do education about Islam and kind of combating Islamophobia. I don't know of any like lower, like smaller grassroots organizations that do similar work. I mean, a lot of small Muslim communities do kind of that work, but not on a big scale. But CARE definitely does that work. Yeah, that's all I know of personally.
Yeah, same. I was thinking of the Council of Islamic Affair Relief. So CARE. Maybe that's something that we gotta, as a community, we got to come up and organize as well to bring about.
Yeah, I think that having that, it's kind of one of those things where we shouldn't have to be the ones to educate, but it does come down to we are the ones to educate. So I think it would be interesting and nice to see education out there, kind of like you said, policy really just for administrators and teachers to have a better understanding of Islam and how the things that they say and do and their approaches can affect their students in the classroom, and how to be considerate and equitable about that. Definitely. I wanted to open it. I know that this is Velma, that I wanted to open it up to participants if anybody had any questions or comments they wanted to add in. Please feel free to, I'll open it up if you want to speak up or drop it into the chat. And Velma, do you want to share about the information you just dropped into the chat box?
Oh, I was just telling people, and I think I picked up the wrong link, but the Council of American on American Islamic Relations, I put down a link over there, and I think that was one of the answers that people were saying. It's kind of like what you're saying, that people need to go and learn for themselves, and I don't think it should be on the backs of the people who have who are Muslim to do the education, but that we should go out and educate ourselves on it. And that was part of the question that I was asking also was, are there activities that we can join to learn more about the Muslim culture? You know, like in the Filipino community, we have this thing called Pista Sanayan, which is a festival of the nation.
Mm.
And Filipinos go there and they party and they do, you know, they sell food, etc. And I was wondering if there's something like that that I can go to in the Muslim community or culture. I know, like you said, you come from different countries, different races, and I was trying to figure out what is the unifying thing in terms of culture.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak. I'm sorry, Iman. Go ahead, Iman.
Oh, I was just, so you can go ahead. Sorry, I just didn't know if you were gonna go yet. You can go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just at Cham Refugees Community. I know that we host multiple events, sometimes not just like religious holidays, but just event where you can learn about, you know, the culture and the religion and just talk to other Muslims, you know. We have like yearly night market, annual night markets. We have like field days for the youth and families. We have sometimes occasionally we'll have like for Eid, we'll have different communities come together and rent out like a space, a field, and, you know, and then families and communities will come out and just celebrate the holiday together. I think these are times where it's open to all, even though it's targeted to like the Muslim families and communities, but there's never I don't think there's ever a restriction of like opening to others. And I know that friends sometimes will come by that are not Muslim. They will come and join and just observe and learn from the experiences. So yeah, I know the Cham Refugees community and other communities, Muslim community as well, hosts lots of events and they're open to all.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that. I was gonna say like some of my closest friends aren't Muslim and they'll come with me to the mosque during Ramadan and they'll have iftar with us, which is when we break our fast in the evening. There's like a lot of good food, but it's also a way for people to understand like how it feels to fast the whole day. So some people will like fast with me because they want to see what it feels like to fast for that day. And so it's not, even though the mosque is where Muslims do their prayers and their like fasting and all that stuff, like anyone is welcome to come in and be in that space with us. And same with Friday prayers, like you're always welcome to come and watch and learn and ask questions. Like there's always an imam or a sheikh there who's like knows the religion and can explain any questions that you have. Yes, it can be daunting if you don't have like a friend with you. So like if you're like, oh, I don't know how to like navigate this space, definitely go with like a friend. But it's definitely like open-ended, like anyone can come in and ask any questions and just learn.
Is it okay if I just share my thoughts on this?
Please.
Yeah, I think what Velma suggested or asked, I think is a very good question and a good way to really for the community to, I know there's not. I'm not aware of any community other than the one out in Olympia, where they actually do like a certain day out of the month or out of every quarter, where they actually have a open, I guess like open house where everyone can come and just see and meet, and just open house not just for the Muslim but specifically for the neighbors and the general population around, to just come and just observe and just really know about that community there. So I think maybe that is something the organizations within the area should also follow, and I think that's something that we as a community will hopefully try to establish in the near future. But if we were to do something like that, I mean, how do you think the response would be? How would we reach out to the educators and the community and stuff like for them to come and actually just observe and be a participant?
Well, I think a lot of us on this call, or all of us on this call, really want to sincerely learn more about the Muslim culture. The issue is sometimes, like for example, when Iman said the mosque is open to everybody, I feel like I'm violating going into the mosque because that's something sacred for the community. So as someone who isn't Muslim, I feel a little bit like it becomes kind of like how do you say, a barrier for me to enter. So that's why I, unless I'm invited, like unless I'm going with you, Iman, to a mosque, then I would feel comfortable, but it's not something that I would normally go to.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I think I feel like a lot of people who are non-Muslim, when they come into those spaces, they feel like they have to explain like why they're there, like what they're doing. The reality is like it's open for anyone who's not like Muslim. At the end of the day, yes, Muslims go there to worship, but as long as you're respectful of the space, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's always scary when people who don't have good intentions come into those spaces to just, you know, make Muslims feel uncomfortable. But if you're coming from a genuine place of just wanting to learn, I mean, our religion also, just like we're all about humanity and respecting people and creating community. So at the end of the day, it would be hypocritical for us to turn people away at the door because they're not Muslim, because our religion doesn't teach that. So anyone there should be open to letting non-Muslims in. It's more just about the mentality you're coming in with, and as long as you're respectful of the space, I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you.
Also, just to add on, something that just came up, an organization that does a lot of like interfaith work, and it's not at the mosque, and they have a traditional space in the Hillman City, Wasat. Their mission is to create a space to connect with people and explore the American Muslims, you know, experience through like art, love, and learning. So you guys can also follow the organization called We Are Wasat. I think it's a great organization to just have like interfaith dialogue as well. If people do not feel comfortable attending like a mosque or anything like that, I think Wasat creates a space where it's pretty open.
And could you drop the name of that organization into the
Yes.
chat for awesome? Thank you so much.
So I think the other question or something that Cha was asking is, how do you think educators will feel if we had like this one holiday instituted? So I was wondering if some of the people from OSBI would answer that. Are there people?
Yeah, I saw that we had a comment in the chat from Kristen Hennessy about discrimination. If you wanted to, if you were willing to talk on what Velma had just asked, and then also about the information you dropped into the chat.
Yeah, and sorry, I try to hold back, you know, honoring that this is your group. And so, but anyway, and I missed the question because I was in the process of trying to find information about the Olympia Interfaith Works group, and I was going to share that in the main chat box as well. So I apologize. I didn't realize there was like a space limitation on the chat box, and so that's why I ended up, you know, including the link to the guidelines that exist about, you know, freedom to practice. To be reasonably accommodated, you know, for religious practices. And that's actually been, somebody mentioned before that it's kind of new. What's new is actually a calendar that we voluntarily started posting on our website. And we cannot force districts to make them holidays or make them school holidays. But we had gotten inquiries from school districts and community members to kind of create this more as a resource for school districts so that as they plan their calendars, they can keep some of these things in mind. So again, we can't force them to, and at first we only had like 1 year posted, and then we got feedback that many school districts like are working on their calendars many years in advance. And so that's why we tried to post some additional ones so that school districts can try to utilize it as a resource. Excuse me. And what I shared is contact information from our office, because discrimination based on religion is prohibited by state law. So if you believe that you were discriminated against, there are options to, you know, file a formal complaint about that. You know, it gets a little bit, you know, tricky with First Amendment rights. And so I don't want to go into too much detail about that right now. But if you believe, or if a K-12 student believes that they're being discriminated against, that's a form of discriminatory harassment. For example, if a student were, harassed because they're wearing a hijab or whatever, and if you have questions about that, please contact our office. So again, if you could repeat the question, I apologize, I got a little distracted.
Velma, I think you were,
So the question was, how would educators, I guess, respond to this whole issue of having even just the first day of Eid to be a holiday? I know you just talked about the guidelines and you can't force the districts to do it, but
Yeah.
how can Iman or the community demand from the school district that this needs to happen? It's similar to saying, we want Christmas off.
Right. It's a complicated issue for right now. The Christmas is the one holiday that is taken off. It's become more than like a religious holiday. It's too complicated to, kind of on the spot explain some of the splitting of hairs about, Christmas being a holiday. However, what is true and actually has been true for some time is that there is an obligation on the part of school districts to create reasonable accommodations to work with a student who, for example, with prayer, for example, if they wanted to do that during the day. And whether or not, again, because I don't want to pretend I have authority where I do not. So case by case situations, I would contact our office about, but certainly it would seem that if a student needed to take a day off to, as part of a religious holiday, that there would be some obligation on the part of the school district to work with that student to make up assignments or to do, to make up work or those kinds of things. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then again, I, welcome you to contact our office. And if you have, individual questions, and to share our office as a resource for others who might have questions. There will be times when we won't be able to give, a clear right or wrong answer. And that's one of the reasons why we have the complaint process. And so if you get an answer that might not feel like a clear answer, it's because our office doesn't necessarily, we do not provide legal advice, but we provide information about what the requirements are. So if people want clarity about what the requirements are, we are certainly available to field those sorts of questions.
I have a quick question. Is there any way to incorporate prayer spaces into each of the schools? Something that is possible?
You ask a good question. I don't know that it's necessary to create a place in every single school, but as the need were to arise, there should be some place where a student can go to engage in prayer that is part of their religion.
I could, because I think it could be something that it's not only for the Muslim, community or anything like that. Any community or any type of faith could be accommodated in that space.
I apologize. Well, here's the thing. As schools, sorry.
It could be considered maybe a meditation room or something.
Yeah,
I know
and
airports and work, so a few places, few jobs have it available, and in the hospitals as well.
yeah, and I mean, I guess what I would say is that, you know, it could be, I mean, schools are really crowded now, so that it could vary where that space is. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to setting aside a space just for that. It could be that for one school, using a particular room during certain periods where it's not being used works, and then it's that classroom's being used or that space is being used. So it's not required that one particular room be set aside for that.
But you could set aside something like what he was saying, a meditation room or just a quiet room. Because I know we've done that in our conferences. When Equity in Education Coalition developed a conference, we had one space, one room where it wasn't called prayer room. It was just called kind of like a quiet room.
Yeah, it's less to, I mean, there has to be an accommodation, but it's more of a space thing, you know, so that that's why it's best to work with it on a case-by-case basis with your school district. So I guess if you were having a problem with an accommodation like that, then to contact our office. But I would just point out that how spaces are used in already crowded schools may take some creativity to accommodate a student, if that helps.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
I wanted to leave it open if anybody else has any comments or questions they would like to ask, add, say.
So I'm going to jump in. My name is Sharon Armstrong, and I am a new addition to the OSPI team. I am going to be training people, districts across the state, and hopefully individual buildings as well, on McKinney-Vento. And so students and families who are experiencing homelessness, and that's sort of my area. And what I wanted to say is that at OSPI, within our team and throughout the agency, even up to the level of the secretary of OSPI, what I want to say is that there's a lot of dialogue and discussion about equity. And so I want to say I feel like I just need to speak on behalf of the agency and saying that we hear you. What you're saying matters. You know, and I guess really that's what I wanted to say. I just felt the need to say that. I just know that other people echo the thought that, you know, we have a lot of work to do, and we recognize that, and it does matter. And there's dialogue, conversation, and efforts going on to address disparity, discrimination. The scenarios that you all courageously shared with us today are truths that we will discuss in many rooms, I'm sure, and at many tables. And yeah, I mean, and this is, so now I'm going to speak just as an individual person on behalf of myself. everybody in this country has a right to pray and practice their religion according to the United States Constitution. So I personally want to say that I'm sorry that you are having these experiences, and I just really thank you again for your courage and willingness to be vulnerable and share them with us for the sake of our learning. And yeah, I just needed to say that. So thank you all so much.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
also, I mean, well, just along with, what Sharon said, I mean, I don't speak for everyone else, but, just myself speaking personally, appreciate it that everyone, here taking the time and just, giving, just opening for discussion and, having a dialogue about this and giving us a channel actually to express and, share our experience and hopefully, collectively work together to make something happen. So, we really appreciate it. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. So let me check. I just wanted to, before, I know that we have a few minutes left, I wanted to check to see if there's anybody else that had any more questions or comments that they wanted to add into this conversation before we go into closing.
I want to make a comment if I could.
Please.
I am a King County CASA. I've been a CASA for 10 years. I've worked with a couple of Muslim families. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. One family I've been working with for 8 years. One I've been working with for 2 years. And when I say family, basically I'm working with the children. Children have been removed from their home for whatever reason. The issues I see as an individual, so this is not an official comment, but the issues I see as an individual is that these children are removed from their family and their culture. So within a year, within 2 years, they no longer say they're Muslim. And that's because, one, we move them out of the culture, we move them into families that are mostly Christian families for whatever reason. I say we, but I mean the department is unable to, for some reason, to find Muslim families to take these children in as foster children. And I don't know how much real effort is put into that, other than you have a lot of children in the system and you need to get them into homes and that kind of stuff. I've gone to their schools and I've seen them in school, and they have the same issue everywhere they go. Their homes are non-Muslims, the schools are not Muslim. I see some of the schools where the teachers try to put, these are elementary kids, put things in the room to represent, to make the kids happy, dolls and stuffed animals and so forth. And it's all Western culture. So there's nothing that the kids see to reflect themselves. When you go into the courtroom, or those who are controlling the situation, some are empathetic, some are not, meaning that we need to take care of these kids and fix the problem, and their culture comes last. Okay, and so my concern is that, is there a way that when we do this, that we can have a mentor? There are mentors set up for these children, okay, but I haven't seen a mentor set up from the Muslim community. One of my Muslim kids has a mentor that calls him 2 or 3 times a week. Different race, different culture, those things. And the people who are doing this feel they're doing a good job. So I don't knock them for their thoughts of they're trying to help these kids. But my thoughts are we need someone from their culture, from their community, who can be a mentor, someone from their community who can show up to court once in a while to make sure these things, the kids are being treated well. I have visited the community center on International Boulevard and talked to the people. My terminology is bad, you have to forgive me, but I've talked to people there a few times. We've set up meeting for one of these families that had 8 kids. Each time I've set up 3 meetings. Each time the meeting was counseled for them, not from the Muslim community, but from those who are controlling the kids. Each time the meeting has been counseled. So the community then feels like, well, Doug, you're messing with us. You're setting up these meetings and you're never showing up. So there's a problem from you. And so that was not successful in my mind. So I'm going back to the question, is there any way we can get a person to be a mentor, to work with these kids who are stuck in the system? Like I said, I've been in one for 8 years. I've been with one for 3 years. And that's a total of 10 children I've been working with who have over the years lost their culture. So it's a sad situation. I don't know how many other situations are out there. I'm assuming that there are more situations out there like that. So the question is, and you probably don't have an answer, but what can be done?
Well, thank you for sharing that. Oh, go ahead. I think someone.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, I don't know about a solution necessarily for that, because that is something that is a very heavy, I would say, situation for those kids to be in, and we need to offer our services as much as we can. So I want to be the first one to tell you, Doug, please sign me up as a mentor, and whatever you need from me, let me know. Put your email in the chat box if you can, and I'll email you later on today.
Will do.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I'm happy to help, but that seems like a very difficult situation and seems like your hands are kind of tied. So I would love to help in any way.
5 seconds ago.
Thank you. If y'all could drop your contacts in the chat to be able to communicate with each other, that would be awesome. So I wanted to go ahead and close this out. We have just ending a couple minutes early so everyone can go enjoy their lunch. I just wanted to, first I'll say thank you so much to our panelists, Iman and Abdul. You have been amazing, and we greatly appreciate you both coming onto this call and being vulnerable and answering our questions for us. This has been another amazing lunch and learn. I feel like personally I've learned a great deal. And then also to the folks on the call who chimed in and shared their thoughts and opinions as well. We really appreciate hearing commentary and information from everybody. It's what makes these lunch and learns great. So again, thank you so much. We will be having another lunch and learn in a couple weeks on continuing the conversation about the digital divide. As a lot of folks know, that there's still a huge gap with the digital divide. There are so many students who do not have access still, and we are about a month into school now. So that will be our next topic. We will have that posted out for you soon. We also still have our face mask fundraiser going on from the Artisan Refugee Initiative. So if you check out our website and you want to help support the EEC, that would be amazing. If you have any other questions or comments in regards to this Lunch and Learn, please feel free to reach out to me or Velma or our general info email. And yes, again, thank you so much, everybody, for being here and participating with us today.
Thank you for coming.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you again.